Good morning and welcome to a Monday morning mailbag on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm Scott Belford. This is the walk-off, joined by the best interim co-host in the biz, Joel Laflemme. Hey, call me on TikTok. Buddy, we have so much interaction, comments, and questions to get to here. And to all of you grounds crew members, we do appreciate the interaction, so thank you so much. You can drop your comments on YouTube. We did pick about 3 or 4 from YouTube this week. You can reach out on Twitter by DMing us at Walk Off Podcast or on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. And if you are a Patreon member, you obviously get that Patreon bump and you get that comment or question automatically read. So, Joel, we're going to jump right into it here. But before we do so, I just want to tell everyone where I'm headed, which is Buffalo in about an hour and a half here. So I've got 2 things I want to do. Okay. So I'm covering the Bisons for the next 2 days. And my only things that I got to get done is I want to find out all the ins and outs of Aroldis Martinez. So I'm going to be bugging all of the reporters in the press box that are covering that team every single day. I've already got an interview lined up with Casey Kendall, the manager of the Bisons, for after the game. And all I want to know is, how close is this kid to helping the big league team? Because this big league team, we watched it last night. This problem is not going away, right? Like I've got some stats to back this up here, but this, my friend, is okay. So we're 41% of the way through the season.
Mm-hmm.
We're over a third through the season. We're coming up on a half. The Blue Jays rank 25th in runs scored, 19th in weighted runs created plus, 24th in ISO. So that's isolated power. That's meant to measure a batter's power by showing how much extra bases a player averages per at bat. So that's pretty much slugging percentage minus batting average.
To interject right there, I just think that weighted runs created plus, the fact that we're 19th, I think just ruined that stat for me. I'm like, well, that's not a balanced stat. The fact that we're in the top 20 in an offensive category, I'm like, well, that's not a real thing then.
which is hilarious. That's where we're at right now with this team, is when they are in the upper third. We're like, or the upper 2/3. We're like, what? How is that possible? They're 26th in home runs hit, 19th in ERA, 24th in FIP, and 24th in pitching WAR. Now, listen, I will say they are defensively the number 1 team in all of baseball. So for everyone, I'm throwing FIP out the window. In this particular case, and I will back that up by saying you are committing malpractice as a front office member if you are not looking into FIP and taking into account the other aspects of a player's game when you're trying to acquire them, right? Like going after a pitcher with, let's say, the Oakland A's, and you're not taking FIP into account because you're just only looking at ERA, that's ridiculous. But in this scenario, this team has been built around defense. So I'm going to throw FIP out the window. It's not a real stat anyways. People are going to hate that I just said that. But you know what I'm saying. I hope everyone gets what my point is here, which is 19th
this team
ERA
shouldn't be pitching independently of their defense.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. That is such a more concise way of putting it, Joel. Well put. So if that's the case, this team, and by the way, man, they are 25-3 when they score 5 or more runs. That is an incredible thing, especially take this, okay? Toronto ranks 25th in baseball for runs per game. 3.9 is how many runs they normally score on average per game. To put that in perspective, the Baltimore Orioles are first in the league, and they score 5.17 runs per game. So if we were the Baltimore Orioles, like just think about that 25-3 record when we score 5 or more runs. That's insane. The success rate on that is absolutely wild. But you lose 3-1 to Milwaukee and stop any momentum. And that's the problem with the way this team is built. It's so hard for this team to get any sort of momentum, right? Like, yeah, they're 9-5, but they can't go on a run longer than 2 or 3 wins because they can't score. They always hit that wall of like, oh, we only got 1 run. And unless it's a 1-0 game.
That 25th in homers, you're gonna have a hard time if you're not out homering your opponent. It's just it's just the way the game is right now. Offense is so tough to come by. It's so tough to string multiple hits together. Multiple hits. We're a team that's built to score off like stringing multiple hits together. And then at the end of the night, you look at the box score and it says 4 hits, and you're like, you 4 hits over 9. There isn't much of a chance there of a multiple hit inning, right?
So
Like,
I am going to dig deep, Joel, and I'm
yeah.
going to find out why the current Buffalo Bison's leader in home runs, Aroldis Martinez, 22 years old, with an OPS of above 850. He has 15 dingers on the league, on the year, I should say. Third in AAA, in all of AAA. So I want to kind of do my research here and figure out exactly how far this kid is away from possibly helping this lineup, a lineup who is in desperate need of some power.
Well, it's also a situation where you're worried about his defense. Gotcha.
Of course.
How are you putting him in a position where he can get 3 at bats and then IKF comes in and fills like the last 3 innings, right? Like, how do you get him in so he takes an at bat in the second, an at bat in the fifth, an at bat in the seventh, and then for the remainder of the game, you bring in
Defensively removed
right,
from the game.
right? Like it's type of that situation of like, let's get him as many at bats as we can and then pull him for the defensive replays. We don't seem to do that too much. It seems to be like just kind of rotation of an entire team, and I feel like that would be a situation where plug him in just for those at bats, and then you get to whatever you're worried about defensively. You're mitigating that risk by only having him play 75% of the game defensively, right? So I think there's a way to kind of like get the best of both worlds. I'll take an error if you're hitting a homer every third game.
I agree. And I do understand that when it comes to developing a player like Aroldis, who is young and has had those bumps in the road, right, where his average just disappears. He's hitting 250 on the year currently in AAA. It's his power that's his major tool. So they're trying to develop everything around him to accentuate that major skill of his. But without regular playing time, it's tough. So I do understand the Blue Jays need to find a way to get him in the lineup every day. This is why the holdup with Horwitz went so long, right? Is that they just didn't feel like they had a spot to give him the reps he needed to continue to develop. They wound up DFAing Cavan Biggio over that. Everyone is well aware of that. So who is next? Where does Aroldis fit, or does he even fit? So again, that is what we're trying to find out in Buffalo when I go down there. And then lastly, the last thing I want to know about is Yariel Rodriguez is having his final rehab start, or most likely, all the speculation is his final rehab start in Buffalo tonight. They're trying to hit around 75 pitches with the guy. Everyone is well aware of how scarce the pitching depth on this team has become with some injuries, losing Alek Manoah, Ricky Tiedemann on the IL currently in Buffalo. So there's not a lot of depth there. So Yariel Rodriguez, they desperately do need him. So I will let everyone know. You can just follow along on Twitter and on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast, at Walk Off Podcast on Twitter. And I will be putting that information out there. And on that, Joel, we'll get into it, my man. So
Let's dive right in.
we'll start with this one because I know that we have been getting DMs about the lack of positivity. And I do just wish to reemphasize what a huge Toronto Blue Jays fan I am, and that I want nothing more for this team than a World Series championship. That's all I want, man. I want to see a championship again before I die. And with the offensive numbers I just read to you, it's pretty tough to believe that this team, even if they do have the ability to maybe squeak in to the third wild card spot, maybe they can win 84, 85 games this year and make that under the wire kind of push. I don't really know if they can, but I have a tough time buying into can they win a playoff series with the construction of this team as is. I don't know. So, this is the question. Okay. This is from Melanie on Twitter. She says, "Hey, Scott and Joel, love the show, but I do miss Adam. The show has been quite negative lately, and I would love to hear a positive thing or two about this team from each of you if you can. Cheers." Um, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think I compared this to the debate between Hillary Clinton and Trump when they had to, you know, compliment each other when they were debating like 8 years ago. And I think Hillary Clinton said he he has great children. You know, like he wasn't she was neither of them were capable of finding the compliment for the team. Um, Being positive right now, it's tough because it's not just this season. It it kind of like you end up looking back at the past and how we got here. You start to doubt that, and then you look at the future, right? And you go, oh no, if we're going into rebuild, how long is that? So you
Mhm.
realize that you're put into this kind of like this is going to cost you a decade of your sports fandom for this team, right? The inability to put it together, the window that wasn't fully opened, and then the fall off, and how as long is it going to take to be competitive after the fall off, right? So there's a lot like if you're really invested in this team, you're afraid for right now, you have doubts about how you got here, and then you're terrified about the future.
And I think everything you just said, Joel, is why there's so much unrest within the
Yeah.
fan base, right? Is that it doesn't feel like there's a concrete plan and we're very wishy washy as to. So when you look at this team and you're like, it's not doing very well and it's struggling just to hit 500 and we need a lot of things to go right for this year. And then you start looking at the future and you're like, ugh, it still feels like there's no real plan.
Yeah, like positive things are, you know, the team has really good pitching staff. Apparently, you don't even have to watch the baseball games at Rogers Center to have a good time. I'm
Mhm.
kind of the opposite fan. I'm the one who only cares about the baseball game, but apparently that none of that matters. So there's that. Also, like this, we have the pieces to turn this thing around and do a quick rebuild.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's not what you want to hear. That's not positivity on the team. That's positivity for the future and maybe saving years off to when we're competitive again. So the one positive is that if you look at what is on this team should be a winner. And
Mhm.
other teams look at the players on this team as really they're really good players, especially the pitching staff. So if we're able to turn that into draft picks instead of having to dive bomb for five
Mhm.
straight 100 loss seasons, I think that that's a positive that the commodities are here to get back to where we need to be a little bit faster. But
I
yeah,
like that.
the
I like that positive, and my positive is very similar to that. It more of a big picture positive, and my positive is this is an ownership group that has invested a lot of money into this team, and they currently have the highest payroll they've ever had in Toronto Blue Jays history. It's pushing $250 million. They're sixth when it comes to payroll in all of baseball, and I think that commitment does extend further than this year. I mean, we did just watch them put $350 million into the Rogers Center. I think that this ownership group does care if there is a winner on the field, or at least a team that wins enough to put enough people into the seats that they're going to make a bunch of money. So with what you just said, right, that there's the assets on this team to hopefully expedite a rebuild slash retool, and with the fact that this ownership group has shown a willingness to spend money, and in fact has shown a willingness to even spend more money than what is currently spent. I don't think those Shohei rumors were false, and I don't think that you go all in after Shohei Ohtani if you weren't actually prepared to spend the $700 million. So there is that. As for the team right now, I am struggling. I'm struggling, man. I don't want to dislike this team, and I don't. I still, even though I know probably the best thing would be for this team to stop middling, and either just full on somehow catch fire and find themselves, and all of a sudden offense isn't a problem anymore. We're like we look back in 4 months in October as we're going into the division series, and we're like, how in God's name did they find this offense? But I don't care. It's amazing. All these players that had regressed are now back to what we thought they were career-wise. Or more likely, the bottom just falls out of this thing, and it doesn't give the front office the option of just doing things halfway.
Yeah, and we're the Canadian team. Why not just go get Barry Bonds as your hitting coach, have him teach everyone how to hit,
Yeah.
and not that Barry Bonds is an incredible teacher, but he's got some magic sauce that he could give these players, and and then go grab a trash can and just start banging away
Yeah.
at it, right? Like just go for it at this point. I love this team so much that I would deal with the vitriol of being the Astros for the next 5 years and like being the cheat team, but just do it. Like show me that you're so devastated by not winning that we'll do anything at this point. But honestly, Barry Bonds as a hitting coach would probably be an interesting example, right? You get
You're
some,
not trying if you're not cheating.
yeah, just bring him in and just try something different. Try some. Who's the best living hitter? Barry Bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make him our hitting coach. Let's see if he can do something.
Sure.
Why not?
I mean, even just doing something like getting rid of a current coach would be
Yeah,
something. But
yeah. Just go get the best living hitter. See what he has to say. See what
so
he
we're
has to
going
tell.
to go a little bit the other way here now with this next comment. This is Michael Sadavoy from Twitter at
Mhm.
Walk Off Podcast, by the way, for everyone who wants to reach out. Hi, Scott and Adam. Love the podcast. Thanks for your passion in covering this team. In my opinion, middling is the worst thing that this team can do. By virtue of having awful teams in both leagues, the Jays will likely be in the third wildcard race all year. And that is one thing to keep in mind here, that we are very in dangerous waters, if you will, because with the new rules and the expanded playoffs, a team very similar to the Arizona Diamondbacks can win 83 to 85 games and probably get that third wild card. It's not at all impossible that you could be just a little over 500 and be that team. He goes on to say, is scraping by just to get in or challenging for this position what we really want? Question mark. The major challenge will be pitching depth. We have none right now. Until that is fixed or people come back from injury and we stop throwing money at the problem, this team will not go anywhere. Only one pitcher for the Jays has started and was drafted by them. Again, the player development aspect of this. And he's on the shelf for the rest of the year. He's talking Alek Manoah, obviously. This lack of depth will continue to hurt us until it is fixed. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Lack of depth. Yeah. Um, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not just the like and to have such a starting rotation, to have so much money put into that starting rotation. These are good guys. Like Bassett and Barrios and Gosman have been workhorses for us. Kikuchi even has been a workhorse for us
Mm-hmm.
for the last season and a half. They make us competitive.
Mm-hmm.
They're the four guys on this team make us competitive. Not 26,
Mm-hmm.
four. And the fact that there isn't a fifth guy to just that average fifth guy who's consistent that we know, hey, he's not the best in the world, but he he gives us a 50-50 shot at that fifth game where these four studs really give us a closer to 60-65% chance
Yeah.
to win every game, right? And the fact that you don't have that internal depth to be able to cover that
And maybe
spot.
Yariel Rodriguez is that guy, but it's tough to bet on a dude who didn't pitch last year, right? Like when they picked him
Didn't
up, it was kind of like we're going to stretch him out into a starter.
Yeah, and that's an expectation of like a guy being a two-inning reliever to being a starter
Yeah.
is it's different, and it's a
And I
different
actually do believe in
ball.
Yariel. It's just
I
like
do.
that's a lot to put on him in 2024.
I do. I think the guy's got good stuff. I think he's got a good attitude. I think I like Yariel Rodriguez, but you're you're fundamentally asking him to play it like third, like he's at first, you're asking him to go play third, kind of by
Yeah.
you're like, no, wait, Joel, he's just pitching. And it's like, yeah, but it's a very different mentality of going through a lineup once with your best stuff. And then how do you tackle them a second time, right? Like that's the difference truly between a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher is that a relief pitcher is obviously throwing everything they have to get through that one inning, but it's usually one or two pitches, right? It's a very
Mm-hmm.
basic repertoire because once you do that the second time through, the opponent is probably going to key into you throwing only two pitches. So you need to kind of be able to throw a splitter, a breaking ball. He's got a repertoire, right? More of a starting
Mm-hmm.
pitcher, but will they be able to get him to be that starting pitcher that's a question, right? It's not definitive. So to go and get him and not truly know if he will succeed at least this year, which is a win now year, it's sketchy. It's
It absolutely is. And I mean, to build on what you were saying, you can just go back to that Oakland series. Chris Bassett pitches 8 innings, loses 2-1, right? Kevin Gosman goes 9 scoreless innings and they win that game. And then they did manage to pull out that game 3 of the series in extra innings, piecing together a very impressive bullpen game. But nonetheless, that also up until the final score was a 3-3 game, right? I know the Jays did pull it off, and I was thrilled to see it. Love that they won that series and continue to build on somewhat of a hot streak here as they are now 9-5 in their last 14 games. But we needed that game yesterday so badly, and to just have that repeat of what our Achilles heel has been for the
one
last
run,
18 months.
one
Exactly.
run on a homer, and it's to me. I keep harkening back to um oh God, why am I spacing on his name? Bob Uecker in Major League,
Yeah.
when he's just like one run on two hits. That's all we got is two
Two
goddamn
goddamn
hits.
hits.
You can't say goddamn on the air. Don't worry, nobody's
Don't worry,
listening.
no one's listening anyways. Exactly. No,
And
that is 100% great example of what this feels like with this team. We're on Groundhog's Day time and time again. And again, you know what is the real killer here is that it's so hard to get on a run when you
well,
don't score, right? Like, how
we
do you
got
win 6 in a row if you're averaging 3.9 runs a game?
yeah, 3.9 runs a game, but we have a 25% chance of putting up a one-run game. I think we have 15 games where we've scored one run or fewer on the season. That's 25% of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a no matter you've got these four amazing pitchers who can come in, and if you put up three, you've probably got an 80%, 70 to 80% chance of winning. If you put up three,
Mm-hmm.
if you put up, like you said, if you put up 4 or 5, you're 25-3, 23-2,
That is
some sort of insane
insane.
record.
That is insane, Joel. 25-3 when they score 5 runs. That is like unreal.
And the fact that there are teams putting up five, and the fact that this team should be putting up five. 3 years ago, you expect the building blocks of this team to pan out to an offense that's consistent and scoring runs in all different ways, shapes, and forms. The youth is developed into their prime years. You've got a veteran core surrounding them, providing you offense. We figured that this offense would not be the problem. And the fact that it is
it kills, man. It
I
hurts.
I'll say this though. I truly do respect Shapiro's children. Does he have children? I don't.
Big props
Big
to
props.
Shapiro's kids. Okay,
That's
so
right. I hear they're great.
this next one's from Patreon, and it's about the London series we were talking about. So this is from Michael Meyer. He says, I'm an international fan, and it's probably cheaper for me to travel to Florida to see the Jays than to London. Those tickets were crazy pricey. I think it's really just more of what it turns out to be is more of an opportunity for affluent Americans to have an excuse to travel to London, which is,
Wait a
let's
minute. Are you
grow the
telling me that
game so that rich
you're telling me
Americans
that
can come and see the baseball played in a different place.
you're telling me a guy named Michael Meyer, Austin Powers himself, can't get home to London? Is what you're
Yeah,
telling
that's
me?
right. That's right.
No, no, that's true. It's a good point. Is that's for all of us baseball fans, that's a heck of a pilgrimage to be able to
Yes.
go to London for the price that would be at and to watch a game there. Um, yeah, it's definitely an attempt at growing the game in places like I think there's this idea that cricket, if you have cricket fans, then why can't they be baseball fans? And right, I think there's this mentality of like, well, let's just show them baseball and we'll grab those cricket fans and we'll bring them on over. I think the goal shouldn't be to put on games in cricket territories. It should be to take like an old baseball team of Hall of Famers, teach them cricket, go win the world championship, and just say baseball's the superior sport. You guys can't. Like you guys play a version where you're literally swinging a boat or on a ball that's going like don't get me wrong, cricket's an athletic
Oh,
sport, but there's a reason
it's an
why
impressive game for
it is
sure.
it is but there's a reason why like a ragtag US team went out and beat Pakistan just recently, and that's
Yeah.
like their game. It's like I really think that if you took like Mike Trout and like Team America and said we're playing cricket today, they'd shit stomp every goddamn cricket team on the planet.
I would
So I
love
think
that. I would
I
so
want
watch
that.
that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would so watch
That's
that.
how
Then
you go get fans. You go
make a
and
Disney
blow
movie
up.
out of it.
That
Yeah.
that's a sport that has 1 billion fans worldwide. Go beat them at it and say that your sport is silly in comparison to ours, and then have those fans come over and make the realization, not by going over to those places and playing games. No, defeat them at what they love and cherish and
Yeah.
say, we do this. Are you kidding me? You bounce the ball in at
Yeah.
68 and you swing a boat oar. The bat is this wide. I
Yeah.
will never miss a pitch. Soto would be the greatest cricket player of all time, right? So that's what you got to do. You got to go in there and just destroy that sport, and then take all of those fans.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, that's a plan.
Going back to Patreon here. This is from Metal Manic. And he says, I know we've, for quite some time, come to the conclusion that the Blue Jays offense stinks. But 10 home runs by Baltimore at the Sky Dome in a 4-game series, question mark, exclamation, exclamation. It's not the park renovations. The Blue Jays have players capable of launching regular amounts of home runs. Heck, we have the reigning home run derby champion. The conversation of the changes to the ballpark in correlation to the decreased home runs rates needs to be closed. And I agree. In fact, I've even brought up the fact that the opposing teams don't seem to struggle scoring home runs in Rogers Center. And
And
I
you know,
think
change your approach.
and you know what? I wish I had a little bit more skill with digging up stats, because I would love to take a look at opposing home runs at Rogers Center last year and then this year, and then compare it to, again, you can't compare it to 2019 because those balls were fucking juiced to the max. But maybe 2022 before the park renovations, take a look and just see. If there's any stat nerds out there who can do the work for me, I would love to see that. But I agree with the crux of this. which is basically, you know what? Other teams are hitting home runs here. It's kind of like the people who take Vladdy's 2021 and it's just like, nah, he's a bum. He hit 48 home runs all because of a minor league park. And it's like, well, you can believe that if you want, but as soon as you start looking into the stats and into the length of those home runs, you're going to see that at the absolute worst, you can take 5 to 6 of those off, and that's still a 42 home run season, right? So yeah,
Yeah, he
there's
led the league in no
variance.
doubters that
Yeah,
year
yeah.
by a staggering amount. He led the league in exit velo by a staggering amount.
Mm-hmm.
He had 280 balls over 95 miles an hour, which was a StatCast record. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like I don't care where you're playing.
Yeah.
The only park that would matter would be like Yellowstone. If he played at Yellowstone, maybe some of those home runs would be home runs. But no, I
And
don't. I
if he
never.
played in Mexico City, then some of those
Oh yeah,
non-home
he'd have the
runs
home
would
run
be,
record.
right?
He'd
Yeah.
have the he'd have 90. He was playing in Mexico City.
We need
But yeah,
two
no, I
humidors in Mexico City.
yeah, no, it was the, the stadium wasn't the reason that Marcus Semien set the home run record for second baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was a it wasn't that wasn't it. It was a different approach. And then really since the stadium came in and they're like, hey, we're gonna make it easier for the opposite field homer. And it's just like, yeah, but you don't.
Nobody hits opposite field homers.
It's just like the entire idea is jumping on a pitch, getting out front, right? Like we want to be out front on fastballs. We want to catch this pitch a foot in front of the plate and launch it power side. And it's just like if you're redesigning Baltimore, bringing up Baltimore and their success here, Baltimore Stadium is impossible to hit home runs to left field. Not impossible, but like the fact that it is a stadium where you have 15 more feet to go in a lot of situations to get a home run. There's like a 15-foot gap where balls are just falling into gloves that are over the fence everywhere else in Major League Baseball. And that team, so what do? They're all their strokes are the left side, putting the balls in the right field where it's short.
Hmm.
Right. Their offense is designed about around what they do. And the fact that we pulled in opposite field for a right-handed dominant team. And then we let our right-handed guys kind of go. And then the lefties that we brought in were never truly capable of attacking a right field short porch the way they would in Yankee Stadium. And you were just kind of like, it was like a plan that didn't, you did, it'll make, was it to make the stadium better? Was it to make us more competitive? Because Baltimore did it to make them more competitive. Baltimore gave up way too many home runs at home. So they're like, well, we're going to take rows of seats out of this thing, make it uglier, make it less appealing. There's just going to be a big green, boring wall that
Yeah.
stops home runs and excitement from happening. And as soon as they did that, next season, winning season,
Yeah.
next season, 100 wins, next season, fighting for the division. Right. And
And
they're
obviously,
like,
obviously, there's a lot of um reasons for this, but they did take into account their strengths and configure their ballpark to play to those strengths.
yeah.
And I'm
And
not
Ryan
saying
Mountcastle
Toronto
still has
didn't.
more home runs
Toronto's
than
just
everybody on the
like
team.
Toronto, like it's the same as this entire plan. It's like, what is the plan? Are we executing it right now? Because it feels like, not to overuse the American Beauty bag floating in the wind analogy, but like that's where it feels like that's where we're at right now with this team. So, okay. Last Patreon question. Actually, I have a couple more here. That's fine. Quick mailbag question. Marcus G says, I have crossed the Rubicon for this season when I start regularly fading the Jays. I've regularly have my interpreter bet on Jays under team runs scored and the opposing team money line, even taking the run spread my negative 1.5 when they face a good team, and I'm winning. I mean, I saw a stat, Joel, that if you had bet on the Jays to not score a run in the first inning for that 30 game stretch and just constantly kept putting your money down, that you would have made, starting with $10, I think it was something ridiculous like $4,200 or something like that, had you just kept doubling down. Like
Oh,
that's just,
no, it's I remember this. I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Happening, but there's this riddle in it that says like if you take $1 and you double it every day for 30 days, how much money would you have? And you're like 1,000, 10,000? No, it's like 10 million.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 10 million. And if you were to repeat that bet, if you were to do $10 and nail it 29 times in a row on that team, oh yeah, dude, staggering amount. I think
Yeah.
I 50 million.
Yeah,
I
you're
would
right. I'm
doubt that it
probably
was up.
way off. Yeah.
I would doubt that it would be up in that amount because it's just like that was a streak that was 100-year streak, right? That was something that dated back to the 1930s. So it was just like,
Yeah.
and Sean Lacomber brought it up, like your team is designed to score runs in one inning and one inning only, and that's the first because that's the only one that you can dictate the lineup that's coming up. So the fact that and the other element of it, the fact that we would score so much in the second, that we're like the best team in Major League Baseball in
It's
the second.
weird.
The idea of just like, well, after 15 in a row, just whoever would be in the second, batting in the second inning, just let them bat in the first. And
Yeah.
let's just try that. Like it seemed like that should have happened about 15 games into the streak. They should have just started doing really weird things. Just
Yeah.
to not definitely not the same George Springer leading off for 20 of those definitely wasn't the answer. So
Perfect subject change here because the next comment is about George Springer. So I was very lucky. Adam Mack made a little bit of time yesterday and joined for MLB Mondays, which was awesome. Our Patreon members were really excited to see him because it's been a couple weeks. But that was one thing that we were talking about was George Springer. And I said, listen, George Springer's contract is an albatross. It is killing us right now. But yes, it was a mistake by this front office, but I have a tough time blaming them because I wanted George Springer so bad and the fan base and everyone wanted him. Now, Trevor reached out and he's like, I do blame the front office for Springer. 100%. I get we all wanted him, but they should know better than us dumbass fans. The signs were there. And if they hit on 2 to 3 of a 4+ WAR a season draft pick in the 9 years, Springer's decline would be a lot less of an issue for this team. The money is Rogers' worry, not ours. And I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, betting on a 31-year-old is always a risky endeavor. The Blue Jays had to go an extra year to lock him up. 6 years with a 31-year-old is an even more risky endeavor. And we kind of all figured the last year or two would be a write-off. We were really hoping that it wouldn't be this soon, that it wouldn't be at the half point of the contract. And unfortunately, George Springer has been a far below average player this season.
mm-hmm.
He's the highest paid player on this team, and he's producing almost nothing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we could almost, he's a guy that if you were to bring up a dude from AAA, the guy from AAA would probably outperform him at this
Absolutely.
point. Now,
Yeah.
the other thing in there that's very interesting that he's bringing up, and he is 100% correct on, and I know I was going over the wins above replacements of the players that this team has drafted. And Cavan Biggio was number 2 on that list behind only Bo Bichette. Now, Bo Bichette he's one of those players that he's talking about, right? He's accumulated, I think, 18 wins above replacement since his start and has been a pretty consistent 3 to 4 wins above replacement guy. But he's right. If they had 2 or 3 that they had drafted that were 4 wins above replacement players, Georgia's decline here, his regression, would not be quite the gut punch that it is right now. So I think Trevor's onto something here. I do like how he said, I get we all wanted him, but they should know better than us dumbass fans. Because I do feel that too, right? Like I'm like, yeah. It's like I said this about Teoscar and Lourdes, right? I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. I underestimated how important those two guys were to the chemistry of this team, the culture of this team, the offense of this team. I was wrong. Also,
See
I'm a
Teo beat the
dumbass.
Yankees over the weekend?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I know.
single-handedly.
I know. I know. He won player of the week with a 1500 OPS and 4 home runs or something like that. Like he's killing it, right?
Mhm.
Leading the Dodgers in home runs and would be 6 ahead of our next closest in Dalton Varsho. But yeah, kind of a
We,
precarious
we
spot to
needed
be
we
in.
needed an eighth inning guy for our minor league team.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. I got to sit down with Adam Macko. He
Mhm.
is currently pitching with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats in Double-A. He actually won the Double-A Pitcher of the Week last week. He has risen to the #2 left-handed pitching prospect in this organization behind only Ricky Tiedemann. And 3 overall, just coming up on Brandon Barriera, still has a little bit of a lead on him there. Canadian kid, originally born in
Canadian.
Slovakia. Like, honestly, man, this guy is an intelligent dude. And one of the things he said that I loved so much, man, was when I was talking to him about how he has approached this season and seen such success, right? Because this has been a year where, as a minor league ball player, you always have those moments where you're just plateauing. And I think that's everything in life, right? You got to put the time and put the work in, and you hit those plateaus. And it's, do you have the determination to fight through that plateau and hit another ramp upwards in your trajectory? And that's kind of where Mako is right now, right? As he's on the upward trajectory, he's put the work in. And one of the things that he said as to how he's approaching this year that's different is he's started to worry a little bit less about his mechanics and the way that he looks when he's throwing and going on feel and how he feels, which is kind of what we were talking to Eric Gagne about, right? When it comes to
Mhm.
over analytics and not understanding your body, and just the fact that you hear it firsthand from a kid talking about it, man, it is exciting. So will Adam Mako pan out? We don't know. And will we look back in 4 years and be like, shit, we actually have like a #2 starter in this rotation? There's always lottery picks. But yes, right now, losing Teoscar has been devastating for this team. And that's not even, this is like the thing with Lourdes, right? Like, I'm not even shitting on Varsho or even Swanson. Listen, things happen. Eric Swanson had a rough start to the season, started off injured, had to deal with the life side of things with his kid. There's all sorts of reasons. But when you sit over and are looking at our home run totals, and then you look over and you're like, oh, God, Teoscar would look so good in the middle of this lineup right now. We'd have a real cleanup hitter, something we haven't had since he left. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I really feel like all of those balls that dribbled through his legs every 30 games or so, they just didn't fucking matter. They didn't. They just didn't matter. They never did. They never mattered. I didn't care
Uh,
about those. I cared
yeah.
about the 30, 35 bombs, the 100 plus RBIs that he can put up. That's a guy. And then the talk that we couldn't re-sign him. What is that talk? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible to resign Teoscar Hernandez. I'm like, do you see the smile on his face? The value that he has was earned here. He was worth nothing until he became a star here. And if we
Yeah.
can't sign that, if we can't sign Lourdes for, I think what he signed for like 3 or 4 for 45, this is chump change. Chump change for guys hitting 4, 5, 6 in your lineup legitimately every day. Who cares about the fucking defense? I care about the ball over the fence. I don't care about the out that's a base hit. I care about the home run that isn't. That's like
I,
it was.
of course, I agree with you now. Like, I 100% agree with you. And obviously, there is a marriage of offense and defense that has to happen to be a championship team. I know that that's not what you're saying, is just throwing all defense right out the window. But yeah, I do think that the defense Lourdes and Teoscar were providing and the mistakes they were making was definitely overblown and probably not quite the killer that we all maybe thought that it was.
Teo's our best postseason player. Those 2 home runs he hit against Seattle in that in
Mm-hmm.
that loss, like that's
Mm-hmm.
the guy. If there's a
Mm-hmm.
lefty on the mound, which is a 30% chance, I don't think there's a guy in the league I want at the plate more than Teoscar Hernandez. in the league. That
Mhm.
wasn't thought. That's not talked about. Like, how good is he as a hitter? How good is he against lefties? The best. He's the best. He's the three. I'd
Yeah.
rather have him up than Judge with a
Mhm.
lefty on the mound. The guy's career OPS with lefties on the mound is like 1100. He's just an absolute freak. And no, it's
And
it's
yeah,
it's
he was frustrating to watch at times. You know what? Guys who hit bombs are going to swing through fastballs sometimes.
mhm.
They're going to miss pitches. They're going to
He's a
expand their
180 strikeout
zone.
guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the end of the year, there's 100 runs, there's 100+ RBIs. It's counting stats, man. Let's go back to counting stats.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the year, you look at the numbers and the numbers on the back of the baseball card. Oh, those are tangible numbers. Those runs that we need to score are runs, not his OPS is great. He only scored 36 runs, though, because he's hurt half the time, but his OPS is exceptional. Get that out of here. Counting stats. Joe Carter. Give me more Joe Carters hitting 770 OPS, 30 bombs, 100 RBIs, 80 runs, can steal 20 bases. Baseball players.
Counting stats, baby. I miss those
Yeah,
days. Yeah, I miss
back to
those
the days
days.
of counting stats.
RBIs do matter. Sorry to offend everyone. So this is gonna add on to this beautifully, and then we'll get off the Teoscar subject here. But Muscle Rarton on YouTube commented, "Man, every time I see a Teoscar home run or RBI, the disdain for Atkins' plan hits hard. The Atkins plan of low power, high defense comes with side effects of boredom, unhappiness, and extreme anxiety. We need a plan ASAP." Couldn't agree more.
The hitting home runs puts a smile on everybody's face. Putting a smile on everybody's face takes the pressure off.
Mhm.
Everybody's happy. Everybody's not thinking about, oh, I'm going to screw up here. No, they're thinking about, oh, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to smash one, two.
There's
Right? It's
absolutely psychology behind this.
yes,
100%.
100%. And the Teoscar throwing spits in your face, just being that big annoying brother
Yeah.
who's so happy when you perform and do something. He's literally just waiting there and he's like, okay, I've got all of my things ready to celebrate this game. I've got all my spits lined up here. So if we hit home runs, I'm going to throw this in your face. And it's just like I just miss him.
The tomfoolery of it all
Yes,
is
it's a
what he brought.
game,
And
right?
like there is a moment that happened in the Dodgers dugout that just exemplifies Teoscar Hernandez. And Teoscar's leaning on Shohei. And Shohei is getting ready to get into the on deck circle. And Teoscar starts telling him, "We're pinch hitting for you." And then all the other guys start being like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And one of the guys grabs a bat like he's gonna pinch hit. And
And Otani's
Shohei is like just literally, and what's funny too is the best part was his face was
yeah.
like, "What the fuck?" And
But then like
then he caught himself though, Joel, right? Because he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't be a bad teammate." Like my
yes,
face, I'm like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, of course, like anyone can pinch hit for me, absolutely." And then Teoscar just bursts out laughing at his face, right? And he's just like, and then Shohei, of course, breaks and realizes that he's having his balls busted. But it is little things like that. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in today's Toronto Blue Jays clubhouse. I know it does. All right. Of course they have camaraderie and
but
there's a
it's George
love for each
Springer
other.
that's all goofy and he sucks.
Yeah. That's truth. Okay. We will move along here off the Teoscar subject. A couple last ones to get to here from YouTube. This one is from Andrew McLeod. He says, "Hey guys, I wonder about Ross Atkins. He must hear the noise from the media. Do you think it affects him, especially with the upcoming draft? I wonder if he thinks that this will be his last draft with the Blue Jays and that will affect who he drafts, whatever looks good on his resume," which is a really interesting comment here. And something I hadn't put a lot of thought into is like, yeah, Ross Atkins is a very intelligent dude, whether you like the way he operates or not is aside from the fact, because he wouldn't get to where he is right now if he didn't have some smarts on him. So is he kind of at a point where he knows that he is a dead man walking here? And is he going to be worried about his resume? Now, I don't know what you would do in the draft that you wouldn't regularly do if you're walking the plank. towards the shark infested water, right? I don't know if it's going to adjust his draft plan or anything like that. But he has to know though, right? Like do you think Ross Atkins, like, he's not a dummy. He hears the the cries and the pitchforks for his head, right?
I would think so, kind of like Angel Hernandez type situation of like, how do you get past it? It's just like
Mhm.
you got to be Googling yourself at night sometimes and seeing what people have to say, or and you go on TikTok and the fans are getting interviewed outside the game. They're not saying nice things. That's your fans. That's the people who are supposed to. Trust me, the other 29 teams aren't saying nice things about you. So it's like that's
Mhm.
the way it works. There's only one team's ever going to be saying that, unless, well, I say nice things about Atlanta's GM, but it's so I guess that's wrong. But no, it's just I don't know. I don't know. I kind of do think he's a dummy. I just,
Yeah.
I like he's got his job through Shapiro, and they have this concept of what the game is. That was the game in 1985.
Maybe
You know,
maybe maybe talking about how smart Ross is the wrong way to put it, but he knows how to climb the corporate ladder. I'll put
let
it that
yes,
way.
yes, he can climb a corporate ladder. That is very, 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 very true. That is also probably the issue, is that ladder climbing corporately now is more important than winning. And yeah, I don't know. You've got to hear it. I don't, but it's always the same lip service, right? And it's like
Mhm.
maybe maybe I'll give Ross the benefit of the doubt by saying that he's probably not in control of what he gets to say. There's Ross Atkins inside, feelings that he has, but he has to suppress that. He has to live in this Rogers closet and say what the corporation wants him to say, right? He can't he can't come out and be frustrated. You can't get that press conference where he comes out and goes, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I
Mhm.
tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, it didn't work. We went for this guy, it didn't work. Drafting isn't working. We can't pull an outfielder. We try to bring left-handed bats in here to balance the lineup. It didn't work. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. I don't even know what sport I'm general. Like, you can't hear that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's all according to plan until you're fired. Right?
Yeah.
That's all you can say. So yeah, he can climb a corporate ladder. Can he build a winning baseball team? I don't know.
He can build a middling baseball team, I'll tell you
Mm,
that.
mm.
Okay, we're down to the final question here. Before I get into it, though, I will let everyone know that we are 9 days away right now from the next baseball town that's going to take place at the Comedy Bar Danforth from 7 until 9, June 20th. So that's a Thursday. It's an off day for the Blue Jays. Our panel is absolutely insane this time. We have from The Athletic, Caitlin McGrath coming down to join our panel. We have from TSN, Scotty Mitchell, who is big into the prospect side of things as well. So we'll be able to pick his brain on some of the guys we should be watching for in Buffalo and New Hampshire. And then, as if that's not enough, friend of the show, Keegan Matheson of MLB.com is going to also be joining us. Tickets for that, $22. Very affordable. We're going to have a roast battle between the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. And then we also have, as our special guest, Lizzie McGuire, who was the young lady who got hit in the face with a 110-mile-an-hour foul ball off Bo Bichette's bat. So she is kind of blowing up. Topps has made a baseball card for her. She's been doing the radio circuit around Toronto. So I'm actually pretty excited to kind of just pick her brain on what the last month of this lady's life has been like. Can you imagine how much, like, getting hit in the face by a foul ball and then all of a sudden you're like kind of a minor celebrity around Toronto? Like, it's just like such a crazy turn of
You ever
events. So
seen Fever Pitch?
yes. Yeah.
It's kind of the fever pitch situation where like Drew Barrymore's at the game and she gets cracked in the
Yeah.
head, and Jimmy Fallon's like, he gets the ball and he's like, woo, and she's just like,
Yeah. I love it. I
no,
love it.
it's
So tickets,
I'm glad she's okay too, because that was a
agreed.
ball
Agreed.
was
Could be very
forced.
dangerous. Everything
That ball
worked
was
out for her.
forced. Yeah.
Absolutely. And tickets for Baseball Town, I will put the link into the comment section here and I'll pin it to the top. Get those tickets. let's have a good old fashioned crowd there. And it was really cathartic last show. Like to
Mm.
have so many people who are so passionate about one thing and you can vent and talk in person and it just eliminates all the online bullshit, because Jays fans will sit online and argue with each other over stuff that if they were just sitting around having a beer in person, we're like, yeah, I mean, we're hooped. Like things are
Yeah,
things are
your
bad.
social
Here's what I
media
think about it.
persona has more fight in it, right? But when you're
Yeah.
socially doing it, you're like, this guy's not an asshole.
Yeah,
I
this
can
guy's
hear
not an
what he's
asshole.
saying, right?
Exactly.
There's a person there beside behind the comment,
Yeah.
and you have to be social. You have to be a human being. You can't be some darkness, person in the darkness just casting aspersions from your.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Exactly.
muted
Oh,
myself as I said
no. I loved it. I loved it. For
that.
everyone on YouTube, they could still see what you were doing. And for everyone else, well, Joel was moving his hands a lot. Okay, we're going to wrap up with this one. I know that you and I talked to Cavan Biggio pretty substantially on Friday. I also know that, or no, we didn't. That's hilarious. Friday, we put our podcast out, Joel, and then literally 1 hour after I did all the editing and put it out, but then we talked about it quite a bit on Long Toss, and this is what that YouTube comment is about here. This is from Scott Carter, and he says, this is actually really good for Cavan Biggio. If he has any chance to have any MLB future, it was never going to be with the Jays. If he can be picked up by a team that's going to let him play one position, he still has one last chance to rebuild his career. I firmly believe that the Jays trying to force non-versatile players into versatile roles was one of the big factors in ruining Cavan, because when he was playing second base when he first came up, he was putting up great numbers. I also expect they are going to do the same to Horowitz. Horowitz should not be playing any other position than first base, which is yet to be seen, but it's possible. And I think I do agree with Scott Carter on this is the best thing for Cavan. If he can land on a team that's going to give him everyday playing time and maybe not get rid of his versatility, but maybe he's more of a Davis Schneider type of guy where it's like, yeah, he's playing left or second every time instead of he's playing left, right, third, second, or first every time. You know, just
He's putting on the
eliminates.
catching equipment and he's like, what am I,
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to learn pitching repertoires? No, like, yeah, I agree with that statement of giving him a shot and not, we always talk about the effect moving Vladdy to first had on his bat initially and how that was a very positive thing. But it's weird that mentality, like that gets thrown away for Cavan. Cavan gets to be, nothing consistent for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also numbers based, right? Like you get to a point where you need somebody to step up, and he's rather inconsistent. His
Yep.
walks are what does his heavy lifting,
Yeah.
and so it's but I don't think, probably the one problem is that he didn't evolve in his tenure as a Blue Jay. He didn't get to the next level. And is that on him or is that on the coaching? Is that on trying to evolve this player and saying, you've always been susceptible to fastballs up. There's kind of a hitch in your swing. You've got a looping swing. It doesn't stay in the zone as much as other level swings do. You've got an uppercut. Maybe we need to work on that. Never changed his swing, never worked on his approach, never worked on where he stands in the box, where his hands are. It was always the same, seemingly, with Cavan
Mm-hmm.
Biggio over his entire tenure. And I feel like there was some coaching there that needed to be done to level out his bat. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe he goes somewhere, somebody else can see a little bit
Yeah, they
different
see something in him
version.
and give him exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. He is 29 years old, but we as Toronto Blue Jays fans should not be judging late bloomers because I mean our 2015 and 2016 success was based around two of those in
Mhm.
Edwin and Jose. So all the best to Cavan. I really do hope that he lands somewhere and succeeds as a Major League Baseball player. I think that he has the work ethic to do so, and he does care. He obviously was pretty upset when getting DFA'd from this team. So, again, best of luck to Cavan Biggio. And on that, We will bid everyone adieu. Thank you so much, Grounds crew. Feel free to drop your comments below. You can also, of course, hit us up on Twitter, a Walk Off Podcast, and Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. Do me a favor, folks. If you are still here right now, please hit that like button and subscribe if you're not a member of the channel. We appreciate all of the support. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you on Friday.